Welcome to Shake Your Fail. Let me start that again. Shake your fail tethers.
Your fail tethers.
Your fail tethers. Shake your tail feathers. So you have a podcast. What's next? My name is Michael Falkner. I've been podcasting since 2008 on various platforms. I run Creative Criticality, which is we got at creativecriticality.net. It's a website about pop culture stuff, including predominantly Doctor Who, where I've been writing about Doctor Who since 2014 when I started watching the series from the very beginning, and week by week looking at each story in chronological order. I am a nerd. I am definitely a nerd. Right now up through Peter Capaldi's Series 8, so he just keeps trucking along. I think if I keep up this pace, I'll catch up to the 60th anniversary at that point.
And then it'll stop.
And then it'll stop. I also have some badge ribbons up here for the DragonCon Theater and Musical Lovers Group, so if you are a lover of live performance theater musicals, please feel free. I don't want to take them home. We are here to talk about shaking your tail feathers, self-promotion, what you can do to take your podcast to the next level. And joining me is this fine panel of esteemed professionals in podcasting. Yeah. If you would introduce yourselves, we start all the way down at the end. Tyra?
Hi.
Hi, Tyra.
Hi.
Hi, nice to see all of you. I'm Tyra Burton. I'm a professor at Kennesaw State. I teach digital media and social media marketing, which is probably why I'm here. It's why I'm everywhere. I'm also running the digital track social media, so please like, comment, share. Please, for the love of everything, I need your help. And I do the geeky side, which is a talk show podcast, and Geek Meets Social.
My name is Bobby Blackwolf. I've only been podcasting since about 2005, so I'm kind of a young person here.
Yep.
Only?
Yeah, and I've shaked my fail tethers many times over those times. But I've been doing a video game podcast since 2005. I've always actually been doing it live. And it's like a 1-hour AM radio style talk show about video games where I give my opinions on things. I called it the Bobby Blackwolf Show because I only thought I was going to be doing it for maybe 17 days or 17 weeks. Here I am 17 years later still doing it. I am also the co-owner of the Voice of Geeks Network, podcast network and Twitch channel devoted to all things geek culture. Unfortunately, no ribbons, but I do have like little poster things in the other room or other postcards, whatever. I don't... fail tethers. That's what I do. And so that's what I've got there. And so excited to be here.
That's going to be a thing of this entire panel.
Yes.
Fail tethers. I like it.
I'm just worried that somebody's going to twerk.
Oh, yeah. My name is Mike Faber. I have failed many times doing podcasting, and I've been doing that since 2008. Just kidding. I have a podcaster, and I own the ESO network. I also host the Earth Station 1 podcast, the Earth Station 2 podcast, and I co-host the DragonCon report. And we've been, ESO Network is right now at 26 shows, and we've been celebrating our 10th anniversary actually here tonight, later, and we will be talking all about the do's and don'ts about it, kind of similar to what we're going to be doing today. And, it's interesting because Mike and I also teach a podcasting 101 panel, and basically to at schools and also at different conventions and such. And that's one of the things people come up to us and ask all the time is, how do I fail my tail feathers?
Yeah.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yes, it is.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marc Leary. I am a cosplay photographer and YouTuber. My YouTube channel is called Blurredography, and I also run a podcast called Blurredcast. I've been helping others create their podcast since 2009, but I started my own earlier this year, and here I am.
Very nice.
That's awesome.
Yay.
Thank you.
And it's his first panel, guys.
Yes.
Is it really? Oh.
Thank you.
So
I am
try to
very
be nice to
nice
him,
So the basis for this podcast, or this discussion about podcasts, was back in about 2006, 2008 timeframe. There was an author who was doing his novels over podcasting on what used to be Podiobooks.com. His name was J.C. Hutchins. And when I was listening to his stuff, he would often give out advice to podcasters about what to do and what not to do. And one of the things he kept harping on was shaking your tail feathers. And what that meant was, you've got a podcast, but if you don't take the next step, promote yourself, figure out how to make your content evergreen or continuing evolving so that people keep coming to it and they bring people with them, generating new topics, all that kind of stuff, you're going to fail. Because as much as people tell us not to toot our own horns, it's your horn and no one's going to toot it but you. So that's what I want to kind of focus on with this discussion. It's a very broad topic, and I want it to be an open room discussion. Because the best way to generate ideas about this is to throw everything at the wall and see what comes out of it, right? There's no wrong answer necessarily. Back in those days when JC was talking about it, there were people who were doing promoting their podcasting work by literally taking USB drives. Don't do this now, it's a bad idea. But taking USB drives full of their entire content to conventions and handing it to people and saying, here's my work, check it out. If you love it, here's my site, right? You don't do that now because of viruses, malware, everything else. We know that. But it's those kind of ideas that we're looking for to make sure that we can make our stuff the best it is and keep growing as podcasters.
And we might actually learn stuff from you guys even, because there's stuff that might work for you that we might not even have thought of.
And one of the things that Tyra and I kind of laughed about, she's the one who put together a lot of the promotional stuff for this track for this year. And she started asking me, like, what stuff do you want on your little flyer? And I was like, you know what? As much as I champion shaking my tail feathers, I do a lot of failing at shaking my tail feathers.
I put a peacock on it for you.
Self promotion is so vitally important, but we suck at it. And so I want to start off the discussion by asking the question, why is that? We know it's so vitally important to promote ourselves, to get our work out there, to continue to succeed. Why don't we do that?
Imposter syndrome. I am the biggest imposter in this room.
No, you're not.
See?
No.
That's my title.
No.
But
Get in line.
We all feel like that, and and I see this all the time because I'm also like on the Twitch. I'm in the Twitch community and on watching Twitch and stuff, and you'll run into smaller streamers or whatever that say, I suck at this game, I suck at this, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, you're right. You know you more than I do, so I'm not going to watch. But that's a self-defeating attitude, and so it's really hard to push myself out there when I'm not sure if I'm good enough, because I've also been told all my life that I've not been good enough at different things, that I sometimes believe it and I shouldn't. And we all have that in some form. Even if you do think you're the greatest ever, you probably do think you're an imposter just a little bit, and you're just worried everybody's going to find out.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. It's the imposters where you're thinking, okay, I've been doing my podcast now for 12 and a half years. I have over 1,000 listeners each week or whatever. And, but I want to be better. Why can't I be a Kevin Smith? Why can't I be a Mark Maron or such? And you always have to look up to it. But you need to look at yourself and your podcast. There are over 1,000 people who are listening to your podcast. There's a reason for that. They like you. They're there for you. And, you have to be able to work with that and then market that and, be able to post it on different websites, post it out on Facebook. Social media is your friend, even though it's your biggest enemy at the same time. Because with the different algorithms and everything, they're going to try to shoot you down as quick as possible.
What do you think, Mark?
I'll go with that.
I agree. Imposter syndrome, that's definitely something that has hindered me from promoting my own podcast. But one issue that I have is, how can I put this nicely? Getting support from like the people that are closest to you, and they'll tell you they support you, but that's not the type of support you need as far as promotion. And when you constantly go and promote yourself, it can seem tiring at times when you get feedback like, oh, you're working again and you're doing this and that, and are you ever going to take a break? But this is your brand. You always got to go out and promote yourself because, like you said, nobody else will.
I think sometimes you don't want to be that guy who's always talking about themselves.
Yeah.
So not only do you have imposter syndrome and maybe there's some self-confidence going on, but then you're like, I don't want to be the guy that's like this used car salesman.
But you also have to be partly a narcissist at the same time to be able to promote yourself that way.
You have to figure, I think you really need to figure out how it works for you and your brand. So like part of mine is humor. So
I laugh at myself all the time, trust me.
So that was my next question. Like, what are the keys to overcoming that? Is there a one-shot solution or is it individualized?
I think it's time to some extent. Just keep doing it. I mean, for me, I've been doing panels at DragonCon for a number of years, and it wasn't until last year that I finally stopped being nervous. And I wondered if it was a fluke, like it was a pandemic, there wasn't as many people, and I'm not nervous this year yet. I'm sure it will happen. Give it time.
Tyra, millions of people are watching and just
Be quiet.
I mean, smile. You might be on DCTV right now.
I'm speaking with my eyes currently.
It's time to shake your fail tethers, right?
I mean, I think it is individualized, and it's got to be authentic. Like, that's the thing that I had to learn, is if I am authentic about the promotion, and because the greatest way, there was a panel yesterday that said this, the greatest way, especially if you're on, like, let's say Twitch, that's where I know most of my stuff, is participate in Twitch. Not just to go in and say, hey, I'm also a streamer, I'm a podcaster, blah, 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 but become part of the communities, and then they learn about you. And then they see that you also do this stuff. And that's the type of promotion I started doing was, you know, I was able to get a couple of opportunities to come here to DragonCon and I can talk about it, but I'm very authentic about when I do talk about myself, and I've been able to get myself somehow in a position over the last 17 years to be able to be in this position to where I don't have to be the used car salesman, but I also don't have 1,000 listeners. So, but to me, that's not failing. You also have to define what is failing to you.
I agree completely. You know, on our network, we have a variety of shows, and some of them only get 50 downloads a month. But, you know, there's 50 downloads.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where you have to put yourself and decide, is this worth the effort you're putting into it each week or every couple of weeks to put out your podcast? Is it worth it? Because as we talk about in our class, for every podcast that succeeds, that makes it 100 episodes, 90% of them will not even make it past their 5th episode.
Yep.
And, you know, because people realize, hey, I've got to do promotions. I've got to get myself out there. I have to edit. I have to do all these different things. And that's where we're hopefully going to help you with it a little bit today. And, you know, we've all gone through that. You know, there's been days where it's been, got to edit the podcast again. Oh, I've got to do this. I've got to create an ad for TeePublic, or I've got to create an ad for Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And you just have to get stuff out there to be able to promote your stuff.
For me, I would one of the biggest pieces of advice that I gotten from someone who I looked up to in the podcasting industry was to expect failure but be consistent. I might have switched that around: be consistent but expect failure. You only learn by failing. You only know what not to do the next time around by, oh, well, this didn't work, that didn't work. You just know not to do that again and go back to the drawing board, try something different. I can't tell you how many times I have failed in this podcasting, but I keep going. You know, my podcast is fairly new. I'm up to 26, 27 episodes, but I'm still doing it because people are out there, people are listening, people are giving me feedback, telling me what to improve on and what not to improve on. Definitely listen to your audience once you start building up your audience, because that's going to help cater like how you edit your podcast. Are you going to be more of a casual podcaster or a factual podcaster? Those are the type of things you only learn by doing.
Exactly. And that's the one thing also, do not get discouraged if you do not hear from your listeners.
Right.
Because most of the time, only time you're going to hear every once in a while, you'll get an attaboy, good job, something like that, or I liked what you wrote. But 90% of the time, if you hear from somebody, hey, do you know a section of your podcast is missing? Or, hey, it came out garbled, or, hey, I hate you, and, you know, stuff like that. And I love getting hate mail. I love getting it because that shows that people are listening, and they're listening to hate you.
To steal a quote from a movie, so somebody says, "Oh, you're the worst podcaster I've ever heard of," and I'm like, "Oh, but at least you've heard of me."
Yes.
Yeah.
True. Well, and if you think about it, have you written your favorite podcaster to tell them how much you love their show? And if you haven't, maybe after today you should.
Like I said, I want to make this an open room discussion. So if you have anything to add in at any point, please go ahead and shoot your hand up, and we'll bring you into the discussion, because I want to hear from you guys as well if you have anything to add.
I have one question. Does
Yeah.
everybody here have a website for either themselves or their podcast?
Yes.
In
So
the
please
works.
do that.
Good.
Good. Okay, good. Because that's the starting point. You've got to own that landscape.
Yes, especially in this era where social media it fluctuates so much, right? We've seen the rise and fall of MySpace. We've seen the rise and we're in the middle of, I think, the decline of Facebook.
We hope.
Maybe Instagram, Twitter, all those things, right? Social media platforms are so temporary, but your website, as we learned back in the days of RSS feeds, that is really your spot. It doesn't go anywhere unless you. It's a double-edged sword. It doesn't go anywhere unless you make it go somewhere, but it's not going to vanish unless you let it die.
The one thing I hate about Facebook, in all truth, is even in my own Facebook group that I have for my podcast, is 98% of the people in that group do not see the post about the podcast because of the algorithms and everything.
Yep.
And because, I might have 2,000 people in my Facebook group, but then you see seen by 35 people. It's like, what? That just doesn't make sense. And because Facebook wants you to buy their ads to do it, and do not waste the money.
Yep.
It is garbage.
Awesome. So I actually had a quick question that actually goes into what we were talking just a moment
Yeah.
before.
Oh,
Specifically, when you actually get those, one-star reviews where they're like, I hate this podcast, it is terrible, and why would you ever listen to it? Don't listen to this podcast. Do you guys have sort of any kind of tried and true thing of, don't respond, that's the best way, or respond with something canned, that's the best way, or respond with something actually like, super logical about what they said or whatever in some way? Do you guys have a response for those types of reviews or comments or whatever in that speech?
I'm gonna go ahead and take this first, just because it's recently has happened to me.
oh no.
I take the policy of kindness. If you tell me you hate my product, tell me why you hate it. What is it about it that you can change? So I'll go to that person, reply in the message. Hey, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate your candor. But what is it about it more specifically you didn't like? What is it that I can improve on? And what is it that I can do to make you a continual listener? Because like what was mentioned earlier, you're going to hear from your haters more than you hear from your supporters. So treat those haters like they're royalty and treat them with kindness. As weird as that may be, I know it's kind of backwards, but at least you're getting some type of feedback. And I grew up on the policy of as long as people are talking about you, whether it's positive or negative, people are talking about you. So I look at it as a good thing. I never look at it as someone giving me negative feedback as a bad thing.
It's true. It's, if it's somebody writes me about, like a technical issue and gave me a 1-star, something was garbled or something, I'll write them back in the feedback, like I'll respond to them saying, thank you for the information. I appreciate it. Give us another shot. We'll fix what you brought up. But if somebody is just hateful or something, I will ignore in a heartbeat. And there's a lot of times, like the first time I got a 1-star review on iTunes or Apple, whatever they're calling it today, was because in an episode, it was right after one of the school shootings. And I had a kid in school at the time, and it really affected me. And so in that episode, and I'm not trying to turn this all about me, but I said, hey, let's get some kind of gun control. Let's get some kind of thing. Somebody a week later said, oh, these guys think they're funny. They were promoting themselves at a con, so I gave them a listen, and they were all getting all political and everything on it. So these guys suck, that type of thing. I took that with a grain of salt, and I was like, oh, screw you, that type of thing. And that's what you have to do. You don't respond. Don't sink to their level is what I'm trying to go for.
So did you really just say not to make this about me on a panel about promoting yourself and making everything about you?
Yes,
I'm failing, see?
There will be no shaking.
That is kind of shaking your tail feathers at the same time, right? I don't want to miss about me, but
But let's talk about my other favorite subject. Me,
I personally have never responded to them. I have a lot more former listeners than I do have current listeners, and I have. And what I do is not for everybody, and I realize that, and I've made peace with that. But what I have said is instead, I will like tell my listeners, hey, if you like this, maybe leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you see this to try to counteract that and let the people who do like your podcast and maybe are part of the 5% that will interact with you, make them or empower them to promote it or put a good review up on iTunes or wherever. And I always say at the end of my show, if you like the show, tell a friend. If you hate the show, tell an enemy. I don't care. Just tell someone.
I'm going to take that for myself.
Absolutely.
Or I've stolen from here at DragonCon. Gary Mitchell started it with talking about the panels and everything. Hey, if you like my podcast, leave us 5 stars. If you didn't like it, leave 5 sarcastic stars. Thank you.
Yes.
So I think there's a balance between it. I think what Mark said about leading with kindness and asking, so what can I do to improve, is what you do when they're being reasonable. And I think what Mike and them mentioned about when they're not being reasonable is when they're trolls, you don't respond. Never poke the troll. But I tell you, the best thing to take care of that is your fans, because they will slaughter them in a heartbeat.
Oh,
and
yes.
you don't get it dirty, they're getting the blood, you're good. So
Let's go with here.
So you mentioned don't pay for the Facebook algorithm, which I agree with, but what is worth paying for then? Which ones are worth it to put the money into for paying?
That's a great question, because it's truthfully, there's a lot of scammers out there. I mentor a lot of different podcasts and podcasters when they're starting up. And there's a podcaster I've been working with who is based out of Macon. And basically, he started his podcast and he saw one of those Facebook ads. Hey, want to get 4,000 listeners, you want to get 5 stars and be at the top of the thing. He paid $4,000 to this person. They disappeared so quickly after they took his money. And do not fall for that. The best way to do it is just word of mouth, is natural. There's keywords. There's ways to do it. Tyra is really good at promoting, and she's taught me a few things, and it's just like it's pretty awesome to be able to get it's word of mouth, and try putting your podcast out to as many sources as possible. People hate it when the DragonCon report comes out because I post it to every single Facebook group that has the word DragonCon attached to it, just because I want it out there. I post it to Instagram, Twitter, there's, and Twitch, and wherever you can, post it. And keywords are so important. Make sure you're doing the hashtags and everything with it, because that's how people find you.
I want to say, just know where your audience is, because that's where you need to be. So if your audience, like Facebook, we can badmouth it all we want, but if you're looking for a 35 to 60 crowd, they're there. And I'll tell you, even my college students are there in groups. Groups are a big thing regardless of age, and they can be really important, like Mike's doing promotion there. If you do that, do take a breath between each post, because Facebook will send you to jail for posting too fast on too many groups, because they think you're a bot.
And I've gotten thrown in jail many times.
See, you have to not be bot-like. But
You need to learn that, Tyra.
I would say Facebook jail has helped me move on to other social media platforms to start marketing there. So thank you, Facebook jail. I do want to add one thing about your question. Like he said, instead of investing in the ads, I would say invest in yourself. Learn search engine optimization, the keyword searches and things like that. Learn business and marketing. That has been the biggest investment that I've made in my brand, is just re-educating myself on how to market things. Because I'm an artist. I went to art school. My brain works like artsy-fartsiness. So I had to reset myself to think like a business. I started creating my own ads and just promoting those through Facebook and putting a little bit of money behind that. I started, like you said earlier, going to where my audience is. I run a geek podcast channel, so I go to where all the geeks are who want to know all the geeky things, and I just go from there. Not only I post on Facebook and TikTok, I go on Reddit, I go on Discord. I'm about to start up Twitch just because a fan suggested that I start up Twitch for my podcast. There's always something you can do before you spend money on one thing.
This is huge right here, because that's about what I was about to say was, it's, you got to kind of follow trends of where things are. And a lot of this, podcasting was described to me back in the 2000s as a labor of love. Like, you're not going to get rich off of this. It's what you put into it, and all of it's going to be from you. It's really a kind of expensive hobby. So like going to DragonCon, for example, you get business cards, not sponsored by Vistaprint. Ribbons are a big thing at DragonCon, so go ahead and make some ribbons. Just a short batch and see what happens that year. If they take off, you head into the next year with a bigger batch. Go see where your audience is hanging out, like has been brought up before. I started experimenting with Twitch just to see what's out there and see how it flows and what it does. Not actually putting my own content on there, but watching other people and how they interact and what the landscape looks like. That's how I learned about the raids. I go, what is a raid? And then you realize this one person that you're watching is now grabbing you and passing you like a football to one of their friends who's now active. And wow, I'm now following them. It worked because they are like the person I just came from. And I like what's going on here. You discover more people, and you want that to happen to yourself.
That's one of the things we do. And first, we made lanyards because for a long time, DragonCon didn't give you a lanyard.
It's true.
And so we made a bunch of lanyards to give out. And then we were like, all right, we got our lanyards. And DragonCon's like, nope, now we got our own lanyards. We're like, oh, so now the ribbon thing, we're going to come in next year, and they're going to be like, no, we give everybody 50 ribbons now. That's how it's going to work.
Your ribbon starter pack.
So
Exactly.
I wanted to piggyback on two comments. I'm going to piggyback on the Twitch rating because we do this. So my podcast is we record it live on Twitch in front of a live Twitch audience, and we kind of changed it up a little bit. After we were done, we would raid someone else, and that works both ways because it introduces our audience to them, and not every time, and you shouldn't expect this every time, but sometimes if the person we raid knows who we are, we'll promote us to their audience, and then their audience will come and follow our channel and be there the next time. And a lot of times now they'll do shout outs, which even put like a 1-minute clip if somebody clips on Twitch, and it will play on their channel. And so it will be a clip of one of your podcasts or whatever. So that's been an effective promotional tool as well. If you really absolutely want to spend money, I'll tell you what so this is more for our network, but this could also work with a little bit of tweaking for like an individual podcast. We do not spend any money on ads on websites. We sponsor events. So my network, we're an Atlanta local. There is a pinball arcade convention in July called the Southern Fried Gaming Expo. We are a silver sponsor, which means we get our logo everywhere. We get an ad in the program, in the app. They put us in their newsletter. But that's where our people are. And then from that, they also allow us we're mentioned in front of panels. We get to moderate some panels, kind of like what we do here. But that's what we use our marketing budget for, is sponsoring that, or maybe sponsoring a smaller event, maybe like a podcaster meetup or whatever. That way they can buy food for people and stuff, and then sponsored by the Voice of Geeks Network. You can absolutely do that for your specific podcast as well, if you want to throw down that kind of money. Which is for smaller things, it's not that much. For things like DragonCon, you're looking at a couple grand. But it's different than ads on a website or something like that, because everybody there is going to at least see your logo, even if they don't really look into it.
One of the best ways also, and it's completely free to get promotions out and people finding you, appear on other podcasts, guest.
Yes.
And, and because like on our show, any time another person's paneling with us on our shows or anything, we make sure we give them time to promote their shows, and then we also promote their podcast or give links to their podcast in our show notes. So that way, it's a way for our listeners to be exposed to a whole new show. And we've actually, either, had people start their podcast that way. Oh, I'm starting a new podcast, and this is what it is. And I've had listeners start with them also and everything. Or I've gone on other shows and I've got, a bump on my shows and everything because of me appearing on other podcasts that I had never even heard of. And so it's pretty amazing and everything what you could do.
I do want to address the paid ads issue. So a lot of caveats. Let's say you've been doing your podcast, you have a good backlog of episodes. There's a lot of content that you have out there. Maybe you've kind of plateaued. You can really, truly define what your target market is, because that's the key with being successful. And then, like Mark said, do it like $10 a week. Do it like low budget. But the longer you let that ad run on Facebook, the better that ad will perform. Because what Facebook does is it learns who to deliver that ad to that clicks on it. And over time, they get very, very good at it. The problem is most people don't let the time happen, or they tweak it too many times. So if you want to go that route, let's say you're like, I'm going to do $10 a week. Awesome. Make sure you've got a backlog, have a good website, have all of that. Then figure out tweak your ad, get it as good as you possibly can, and then let Facebook chew on it, and it will eventually get you where you're going. But it's got to have time.
So you have a question?
Yeah, I'm throwing that question out, and I'm following up with something she said.
All right.
All right.
So, you said define your target audience and how important that is. Can you explain a little bit more of like what that process is and how to even start thinking? Because I started a podcast about 3 months ago. I was inspired by 2 completely different friends. They're like, yeah, we're doing a podcast. We're doing a podcast. I'm like, that's cool. I'm going to do one. Found somebody that was willing to do it with me, so I'm not just talking to myself. And then they're all gone. They stopped doing it. And it's just us now doing the podcast. And we've been doing it for like 3 or 4 months now. And I have no idea the target audience. I feel like we're just making stuff up as we go
That's
along.
okay. That's totally cool.
There's actually a group on Facebook that looks for random podcasters who just talk about everything. I don't have my phone on me to look it up and tell you, but Facebook.
And just look in the category of podcasts and, and then usually I tell people go in the category of groups, and there's hundreds and hundreds of different promote your podcast here, drop your podcast here, but just be careful because you will get emails from scammers.
Yeah.
But you also might get some listeners out of it, or you might get somebody, hey, I like what you're doing, come on my show or something. And there's even groups out there on Facebook, guest on a podcast, and you could guest, if it's a topic that you're into, and that way you can promote your show and everything.
So what is your show about?
It's called Promote Myself. Right?
Yes.
Yep.
Very good.
Yes,
Very good.
please.
Get my proper position. Dorothy and Desk, right? Your place for all things fancy and sci-fi. That's kind of like the tagline for it.
Okay.
And everything. We were just talking to a mic, and we barely have any followers. We've got like 12, 15.
That's good.
That's
That's
good.
awesome.
That's
Like
2 digits.
That's 2 digits.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
the big word is
He's doing
get.
awesome.
That's more than your mom and dad.
Ah,
so
you got one in the back. You see?
13.
16 right
First
there.
off, that's
As
a
a matter of
fabulous
fact,
title, by the way.
There's a Facebook group I'm a part of where we're all content creators called Geeks United. You'll be perfect for that. That's where you should go to promote your podcast. We all support each other. We all collab on each other's podcasts. We all listen to each other's podcasts just because we're all dorks and geeks and blurs ourselves, and we just want to have arguments to see who's the king of the nerds.
Right, yeah. That's essentially what we do, yeah.
Because
Well-
it wouldn't be the internet without argument.
And you've just defined your target market.
Can you explain it?
So, like, you're looking for somebody who's into fantasy and science fiction, but not just in a read a book every now and then. You're talking to people who this is a part of their life. This is a part of their lifestyle, that they're okay with defining themselves as being dorky or geeky or nerdy. They're probably between the ages of, let's say, 20 to 55, 60, but probably a lot of them, since you're a younger man, I'm assuming, you might not be, but who knows, somewhere between that. Hey, we're good. 25 to 45. You can decide if you swing one way on one of the gender or float in the middle. It doesn't matter. But you're getting an idea of what that person looks like, and they probably look a lot like you. So when you think about your target market, it can be that way. You can also be surprised. When I first started Geek Meet Social, I thought I would have a very geeky audience of cross-gender and everything. I ended up with a lot of female subscribers who were very interested in the fact that I like geek stuff, but I'm also an organizer and planner and talk about what it was that you first said here. Imposter syndrome.
Yes.
That's it. And so yeah, I was surprised at what my audience turned out to be. So you may find that as well, but you're there. And what was the Facebook group? Because I didn't get it written down.
Geeks United.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, I wrote that down.
And your podcast
right
was?
down here too.
Dorky and desperate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look for you. You already got another one right here.
I'm gonna tell my friend Travis that we got 2 followers.
All because you shook your tail feathers.
That's right.
That's right.
My fail feathers.
Your fail tethers, yes.
And as
You're
a,
not failing, though.
No.
as a friend of mine said, if you have 15 followers and you gain 3 today, you've got 20% increase.
That's right.
Yeah.
Percentage is always better.
Did I see another hand out here earlier? No?
No,
Yes, no?
no one
yes?
wants to talk to us.
Okay.
They want to listen to you. Don't you guys do podcasts? That's how it works.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we've actually covered a lot of ground here with networking and promotion and the business of podcasting. What about topics, evergreen content, keeping it fresh? How do we do that?
I'm so happy you mentioned evergreen. So, small backstory. In the day, I'm a black geek and I do all my fun stuff. And at night, I work at a TV station where we have to have evergreens. That's a TV term. Evergreen is something that you make that you can just put out at any time. A problem that I have had as a podcaster and content creator is staying relevant. That's always like a huge thing. Like since I cover like geeky things in pop culture, if a Marvel movie comes out on Thursday, I have until Monday at the latest to post something about it, or else I fall out of relevancy. So I don't like that because that's a quick turnaround for me. I don't like doing that. I like to talk about things that I can just prolong throughout. So I do like an interview series that was my evergreens. I would find cosplayers or comic book artists or comic book writers or whoever in the geek sphere and interview them. That actually turned into the main focus of my podcast because I did so many of them, trying to stay away from relevant topics that I have only 2 or 3 hours to post on to get the best results for SEO and things like that. So that's kind of how I accidentally fell into what my niche is for my podcast.
Well, for me, it's always, trying to see what's coming out because Earth Station 1 is a total geek podcast. And, each week we talk about something different and we're scheduled out. I make a schedule that's at least 6 months in advance. And, every once in a while we have to scrap an idea because of, something a news story breaks or something really hot that we weren't expecting to is more relevant to talk about than what we had. But we talk about, movies, TV, music. We do interviews. We look at comic artists, comic writers. We look at it all. And we even had to cut back a little bit because we also used to do a science episode. We also used to do an episode about, we used to do LGBT. We also, we did all across the spectrum. And we also were looking at, how do we said, do we want to mainstream and talk about like just TV or movie? It's like, no, we like talking about everything. That's why our station is your station for all things geek. And that's why we also have 26 different shows on our network to be able to talk about all different topics and everything. And that's where you have to see where you fit in, basically.
So I boxed myself into a corner when I decided that my show was going to be really all about like the news of the last week. So I don't have that much evergreen content, but I do have an answer for this question. So so stick with me.
All right.
Every once in a while, I will do something that is a little bit more evergreen. And so like I do a video game podcast, but I very recently got into, I got some arcade 1-up cabinets. Have you ever tried to build one of those?
Yes.
Well, so I've got those, and also I've like gotten into pinball collecting. I've been fortunate enough to be able to get into that. Have you ever put together a pinball machine?
No.
Probably not. But I went through that on my podcast, and since it is an audio podcast, and I am very good at doing the descriptive audio, but we're on Twitch, and we have the video, and I shot video of me doing this that I was narrating over, and that content I put on other platforms. So that portion of my podcast is on YouTube, and it's got all the SEO of YouTube. But in the comments, it's like, this was part of episode 754 of the Bobby Blackwolf Show. You can find it here. But that way, people are seeing that portion, and if they like the way that it's presented, maybe they'll check out the podcast. So my evergreen content is what goes to other platforms, whereas the weekly, news and stuff would be on the Twitch feed as well as the podcast feed.
That's a great idea.
That's a really good idea.
And if I do interviews, I also do that the same way, because what we do to make money is when you're a Twitch affiliate, you can lock your VODs to subscribers only, which can also mean somebody who used their Twitch Prime for the Prime Gaming sub, but they pay $5 a month. Then they can see the VODs. But if you're not a subscriber, you can't see the video. So the stuff I really want them to see that's evergreen, they can see for free on YouTube.
Cool.
So one thing you can do, the Geeky site originally was a very much current topic thing, and I've turned it into an interview show, which makes it definitely more evergreen. But like with Mike's shows, where they're covering current topics, they don't watch his show if you don't want to be spoiled. But the great thing you can do with his stuff, even though it's very relevant, is let's say the next season is getting ready to start, he can promo that old episode where they reviewed the season before, or the movie sequel's coming back. We'll say, hey, did you miss our episode the first time? Go back and watch it before you see the new series. So even in something that seems very current event driven, you can turn it into evergreen by just remembering, hey, okay, we talked about James Bond. We've got all this James Bond content. Here comes the new movie. Hey, guess what? Check out blah, 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 blah.
It's okay to reference older material.
Yes.
And a lot of times we just tell them, we'll wait till you come back. We won't be going anywhere. We'll sit here.
How much do you chase trends to keep up with an audience and keep your content engaging?
I stopped chasing trends. Well, no, let me not say that. I try not to chase the trends. I focus on things that I just naturally want to talk about on my podcast. Like I said, I do interviews and things like that. But for other episodes when I'm not doing interviews, it has to be something that I am passionate about, something that I am interested in, because trends are trends. They're going to come and go. But for me, I care more about the authenticity of how I come off of the subject matter I want to talk about. I talk about football on my geeky podcast because I'm a huge Falcons fan. I grew up in Atlanta, and I feel like you can still be considered a nerd by liking sports because I do fantasy football and stuff too, and that's super geeky.
Fantasy football is just D&D for jocks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You do not have to be a jock. I'm on an all-female fantasy football league. So there.
Wow.
I think that makes you a jock.
You are officially a jack, Tyra.
I'm married a high school football player, so I know it's okay. I've watched a lot of ESPN.
No.
now.
Trends come and go, and and that's basically with our podcast. We don't follow the trends. We talk about things we like, and that's where I think most of us stand out by doing what we like, what we have a passion for, and we even made a T-shirt that says "Geek equals passion," and it's what you're passionate about. I don't care what's going to be hot this week. We're looking at the trends and everything, because in 2 weeks that podcast episode will be outdated, and I want people to go back and listen to older shows. I have 645 episodes, to listen to. I want people to go back. I wouldn't say number one, but I want them to go back to listen and hear, what we're talking about.
I think people can catch you if you're trying to catch a trend. It's not very authentic. And when you're podcasting, it's you doing the talking. So if you're catching a trend and you're not being who you are authentically, your audience is going to know that. I mean,
Okay, so I have kind of a niche question that you actually just reminded me of. So our podcast has been going on for a little under 4 years.
Okay.
And so we do actually have quite a number of episodes, but unfortunately, the two gentlemen who actually started the podcast from the very beginning, one of them is still on it, but there have been others who have taken over the podcast with him, and I'm one of those two people. And we jumped on somewhere in the neighborhood of episode 25 to 30.
Okay.
So what do you do in some ways, or are there any thoughts that you guys have about sort of seamlessly, if you will, making it so that you're not necessarily sending them back to the very beginning of the show if the show isn't what it was at the very beginning anymore? If that makes sense.
Oh,
No.
I need
If you're on
this answer.
episode 150 and you want to send them back to like episode 35 because that's really the same as episode 150, like with the same people and the same feel, how do you do that? How do you navigate like a show that's a little bit different than what it's started?
Well, you just give them a little bit of a caveat and say, hey, we talked about, say, Clone Wars in episode 35 of Earth Station 1, and you'll be able to hear, this is the first episode, say, with Mike Gordon as a co-host, and, it might sound a little bit different, but, the information is still very pertinent, and, and it's kind of cool, in the archives, you could also say, and you could hear my voice was a little higher, or you could hear, you just make fun of it and have fun with it. And because you do want to promote your older episodes too, and you make them very easy to access. The search bar on your website is one of the best ways, because a lot of times if they go to Google or Apple, they only have the last 50 episodes up there. So people want to hear older stuff. And like between Bobby and I, there's 1,500 episodes, and that's a lot of content to go through.
Yeah, and also what you can do is, because people like to see the evolution. Like if they like it now, they want to hear what it was like with the original person. My favorite band Rush had a different drummer for the first album. People like going back to hearing John Rutsey. But what you can put also, because podcasting, especially, we've been doing it for a long time. We also put on disclaimers being like, by the way, 2005 was a little bit of a different time in terms of what was said. So, just keep that in mind, that there are things we wouldn't say in 2022 that we would at that time.
Also, technology is different.
Yeah.
And so, it sounds different. It is different. And it's a whole different world we're living in, when we started the podcast, there wasn't even an iPhone, type thing. So it's pretty amazing what you could do. And it's just...
Back when everybody thought podcast was because it was on an iPod.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, exactly. And, I remember sitting at my tables at conventions, people walking up, what's a podcast? And, it's like a talk show. Oh, like Rush Limbaugh. Okay.
TiVo for radio.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Oh, I
and
like
everybody here's
that.
like, what's TiVo?
Exactly. You're dating yourself now.
So I'm actually struggling with this because the geeky side used to be me and a partner co-host doing it. It's now just me. The format's completely changed, but I love the IP of the property, so I didn't want to get rid of it. And so I'm having that debate. What do I do with the old episodes? And right now, I don't have as many as you do, but I'm thinking of stripping them off and sending them to archive.org and referencing them on the site that way.
That's a good way to do it.
Or say that's version 1.0 and this is version
Yeah,
2.0.
no, it's definitely, I'm version 2.0 always. So that's what I'm thinking about doing. What you haven't told us is, what is your podcast?
So myself and two other gentlemen do the Black Tower podcast, which is actually entirely a Wheel of Time podcast.
Awesome.
And so we just talked about different topics, and we're a full spoiler podcast. There are a lot out there who are doing sort of reading through the series. We have fully read the series, and we just talked about things sort of start to finish, because Robert Jordan especially and Brandon Sanderson are amazing at going ahead and doing things from book one that actually have relevance in book 11.
Oh,
Yeah.
And so actually being able to talk about sort of these themes all the way across the series is...
Have you been talking about the
fun. And
TVs?
so we really dive deep into those different things just all throughout the world.
Have you been talking about the TV series at all?
Yes.
Cool.
And that's another way that I appreciated sort of... We do a lot of evergreen stuff. Almost all of our stuff is evergreen, because most of it is about the book series, which has been out for a while. And so it's not, immediately relevant, because there aren't a whole lot of Wheel of Time books coming out anymore. But the television show and the new Origins book and things like that, we're definitely getting a lot more sort of immediately relevant things because of those new properties that are coming out.
That's awesome.
So we got about 10 minutes left. And what I want to do at this point, we'll get your question here in a second, but I also want to open the floor, because this is all about shaking your tail feathers. We've been doing this. We've got a couple people here. So, what are you working on? You're all podcasters, right? If you got a show, let's talk about it. What is your show about? We'll start here with your question. Yeah.
Actually, I need a laminate ammunition for my show. I'm on Cyberpunk or Cyber Psychos. It's a cyberpunk red tabletop live play game. It's me, a handful of stand-up comedians from Charleston area, and a few other folks. Really good production value. The DM's great, but I didn't realize how much I just kind of incepted myself into it, where I play kind of a jackass YouTuber in the cyberpunk world. And what are some, like, I need some ideas of cringy ways to, market myself, because in the middle of a firefight, I need to be able to pull up my little selfie cam. It's like, you're on Brockdown, and, telling people to like and subscribe, and just, what are ways to market that maybe more funny than effective?
Well, since you're alive, you do it on camera, right? Or is it just voice?
I'm actually thinking about just to market the podcast, start my own little TikTok channel and start doing those as well. But I'm more thinking like in story. What's probably the worst, examples of self-promotion that you've seen?
Well, just go to a car dealership, and you'll be good. But I think you're onto something with the TikTok or short reels, because you can utilize them in so many places, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on TikTok. Strip off the TikTok stuff before you take them other places, please, for the love of God.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that doing that kind of coming up next with your big sign, and I think you could have a grand time with it on those. And you don't even have to do them very long.
Yeah. Coming up next, this guy's getting a battle axe to the head.
You just need a folding chair and the ability to lift it,
Can you get someone else to act like they're TikToking, and then you photobomb them and promote your podcast on their TikTok and post that to yours?
Good. That's really good.
That would be
is
awesome.
good. You're a professional, aren't you?
Also, T-shirts.
Like and subscribe.
And stuff.
Yes,
T-shirts.
t-shirts.
T-shirts, key
Yeah.
tags, postcards, anything
We're
that,
definitely on the verge of, starting to work on merch.
because you can start a TeePublic store for free. And all you have to do is upload your artwork or whatever, your logo or stuff like, or, just, you can even make up like different sayings. Hey, I'm a big jerk, or, or something like that, and put it on a T-shirt, and have your podcast promoted on it. And it's pretty darn awesome.
There's a lot of RPG podcasts here. You might want to
Talk to
talk to
someone.
them, and you could like break,
I was at one yesterday.
and you could like break in on theirs. Like all of a sudden there's elves, and then there's you. And I think there's a lot of collab you could do that'd be really fun.
There's so many ways to do it.
Speaking of which, can I actually ask a relevant question right now, just real quick?
Yeah.
What do you guys use, like, sites-wise for your merch? Because I actually think that's a
Okay.
super helpful thing for younger projects, to just not just go with what Google thinks you should go with as far as merch. Like, actual people who have used merch stores.
Yeah.
What do you guys use?
What I love about TeePublic is you could just put your artwork up there, and they will have down the side all the different merchandise that you could put your logo on. You could put it on banners. You could put it on coffee mugs. You could put it on mouse pads. You could have, whatever you want. You don't have to choose what you want your merch on. Just put your logo up, and they'll have it there for you, which it makes it so much more easy. I saw people yesterday wearing the DragonCon report T-shirts, or I saw people on Thursday night. Someone had a koozie with Earth Station 1 on it, in the Marriott. I said, "That's my podcast," and they were like, yeah, get away from me.
How's the quality of the material on like the
T-shirts are
shirts?
awesome.
Here, feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're they're
It's very
really
solid.
good quality,
It's really
Yeah.
and they wash well.
TeePublic.
Yeah,
It's like
TE.
T-shirt.
Yep.
TeePublic.com. Yeah, and it's awesome for you to do it.
Yeah.
And they don't even have to buy your stuff if they use your link and they go look at other designers or something. You still get money when they buy stuff and everything because they went through your link. That makes it even cooler.
So what we used for a little bit was Streamlabs. Because we're Twitch streamers, and it also integrated with all the integrations and stuff. So when somebody bought merch, we got an alert that got sent up and stuff. But unfortunately, you needed to pay up front for that, and also when Streamlabs and OBS had their little spat, we're like, we like our open source friends, and so I know there's no ethical consumption in capitalism, but we decided that we were going to go somewhere else. We were looking into Stream Elements because they also have a merch store, and it ties in with their alerts, which is what we use now is Stream Elements alerts.
And the cool thing, like with TeePublic, and I'm not a shill for them at all. They have sales and stuff like that with it, and so like at least twice a month, where you could actually help, say, hey, we've got our T-shirts on sale for $14, and you can get it up there, and a lot of times it's free shipping. Or if you buy, other things, it's 35% off. So you just go through, and it's a way to get your name out there. And the coolest thing is going to DragonCon or going to any con or walking at the mall, anything, and seeing somebody wearing your shirt. The weirdest one was we created a logo with our faces on it and everything. To see somebody having my face on their chest, it's pretty awesome.
Thank you very much.
All right, so now back here, you have your 30-second elevator pitch on your podcast, or you have a question? Okay,
That's okay.
Go for it.
Go for it.
We are the Artist Haven. We are
Yep.
haven for creators of all walks of life in new formats. On your merch, my merch, I get it from Spreadshirt. Spreadshop is running on TV One. It's also integrated on the YouTube channel.
We use Spreadshirt.
Yep. So you can integrate that. Stream Elements. They're working with them to get a kind of alert for that, because I use Stream Elements as well.
Yeah.
Because we only, right now, for the last year, we've only been doing like and I was going to ask you, because you do the Twitch, which I tried to do and failed miserably. This is okay, forget it. We're not going to try anymore. Did you do your Twitch streams and then go into podcasting?
Yes. Well, no. I was a podcaster first.
Okay.
And but I started with live streams, but it was audio. So it was over Shoutcast, internet radio.
I remember those.
So like you could find us on the TuneIn app. That was how a lot of people later on found us. And then we were like, well, nobody listens to internet radio anymore.
Right.
And so that's when we jumped to Twitch. But we didn't go to Twitch until like 2018. So that was like year 14 of my podcast.
We've been going live since 2019.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
So 3 years, and I was doing it 7 days a week for a while.
Ooh.
Oh,
Awesome.
Lord.
And
You're worse than I am. Wow.
now we're going to 2 days a week. We've
Okay.
been slowly taking days off.
Yeah.
But I'm also integrating more edited content into the channel as well. Because I know that's the way to get more people to see our live streams and stuff. Putting edited content that will appeal to more people.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So, but I just wanted to know if you have a recommendation for someone who's kind of maybe reverse engineering that. Like, because I've been live streaming on YouTube, and I started on Facebook too. But I want to take some of the content that I already have and start a podcast with it, and then start adding more and more and more stuff in just the podcast. How would you recommend doing it?
We got 2 minutes.
I think there's probably a panel coming up next that would also help on that.
Yes.
Yes.
The next panel is actually about podcast, like
Switching.
it's
Yeah,
going the other
switching.
direction.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit about, we'll talk about how to not alienate the audio only listeners with your video content and, stuff like that. So maybe stick around because I only have 2 minutes.
Yeah. And literally in 30 minutes, we'll be talking about that. So,
Yeah.
in this room.
Or come and chat with us in a second, and we'll tell
Yeah.
you.
Yes, definitely.
What
I,
other-
I apologize for not getting to everybody who want to shake their tail feathers out there, but we are pretty much out of time. So I want to go down the list one more time so we can all shake our tail feathers and thank everybody for being here today.
It's better than shaking our fail feathers.
So let's start with Tyra.
I'll start again. So I am Tyra Burton. I'm at tyraburton.com and thegeekyside.com and geekmeetsocial.com, because if there's a URL and I have a show on it, I buy it. You should too. That's my thing. So drop in, listen. I need more listeners too. So
And I'm Bobby Blackwolf. I'm the host of the Bobby Blackwolf Show. I'm at Bobby Blackwolf on Twitter, at VOG Network, the Voice of Geeks Network. That is the network on Twitter, vognetwork.com. I also own vog.network. And because somebody else would always say thevognetwork.com, I had to buy that URL too.
Yes.
And so that is where I'm at. And I do my show live every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for 1 hour over at the Vog Network Twitch channel. And then it's put out on the podcast feed.
Awesome. My name is Mike Faber. You could find me, of course, anywhere across social media, Mike Faber, and of course, the ESO Network, esonetwork.com, and then Earth Station One, which is earthstation1.com. And, we're always looking for new podcasters for our network. So if anyone has a geek show that they're looking to expand, please talk to me.
I am Marc Leary. You can find me on YouTube under Blurredography. That's Blurred and Photography, Blurredography. And you can also find me on everywhere you can listen to an audio podcast at Blurredcast. I talk about blurred culture and a lot of geeky things, so come check me out.
You did amazing for your first panel.
Yes,
thank you.
Yay.
And I am Michael Falkner. You can find me at creativecriticality.net. There are business cards because that title is a little hard to spell. I also have ribbons up here. And thank you so much for coming out.
Faulkner's not that hard to spell.
No, it's not. Well, actually, you'd be amazed. And thank you so much for coming out to shake your fail tethers. I mean, your tail feathers. We appreciate you being
Thank you,
here.
guys.
Just shake it. That's all
Just
that
shake it.
matters.